Hey, it's Joe Solari here, and this is the Business of Writing. Today, I have Margarita Coale. Margarita is a lawyer and has been working in the publishing business for a while and has been involved in some pretty interesting cases. We'll hear exactly from her all about that in her introduction. Welcome, Margarita.
Hey, Joe, thanks for having me. And before we go any further, because we lawyers like to do this, nothing I say is considered legal advice, and because it's very fact specific. And if you have a question, we'll be glad to, what we're going to try to do, Joe and I today, is I think just introduce you to concepts and thoughts of how it applies to your business and why it's important to not only write great books, but also figure out how to protect those great works and do it correctly.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're here to give you kind of some general understanding so that you can get the most common questions answered. But if you've got a specific issue, you need to go consult with maybe you.
Yeah, well, any lawyer knows what they're talking about. But I have been very lucky to represent some very fabulous authors. I did not start out as a intellectual property lawyer. This is kind of my reboot. I was approached many years ago by an author asking to get her rights back or to help her figure out how to obtain the first book of her series back. And after some contract negotiations and 4 very long months to her, 4 very short months to me, we got the books back and we were able to get the book that was the flagship of her series. Ever since then, every time she had something, she kept coming back to me. And now I represent probably between 60 and 80 authors, depending on the month and an issue. Some of them are full-time. Some of them I just do particular things, but most of them are in the romance area. I also have some that do gaming, podcasting, children's book, and I also now have hopefully a sci-fi one that I'm about. And I have my particular specialty is I not only do intellectual property, I also help authors kind of make sure that as they look at their businesses, do you have the NDAs you need? Is your corporation are you publishing correctly? How you're publishing? So I work with other professionals to try to make sure that you're taking advantage of every single aspect of protecting your writing, protecting your business, and acting like a business, not just a writing.
Great. Yeah. And you're based in Texas, but you work with clients all over the United States.
Yes, I do. And I actually have some foreign clients too.
Oh, okay.
Because I would say about 1/3 of my clients are foreign clients. And the reason why is because intellectual property is territorial, right? So the fact you have a copyright in Australia or in the UK might not have the consequences of protecting your books in the US the way you want to. And you can register your books in every single jurisdiction, just like you do trademarks and patents. So even though there are some international conferences that will give you, mutuality, so if your biggest market is the US, even if you're foreign, it might make sense for you to register your copyrights or register a trademark in the US. So,
well, why don't we start there? Because dirty secret of the industry is most American authors don't register their own copyright in the United States. They have a lot of misconceptions around it and think their work is registered and I think that we could probably just start from the bare bones of like how copyright works and why it's important and see where that takes us.
Well, I think that there has been a lot of misconceptions and misunderstandings, but in the United States, copyright is regulated by a federal statute, right? So there used to be the common law copyright, and that had kind of a lot of thoughts. And then we had a statute, and the statute basically says everybody has to follow the same rules. Now, to have a copyrightable material, and I'm going to start about copyrightable material. You have to have a form of art that is fixated, that's an expression, and that it's original. And what's important about that is if I have a song in my head, you know, even though you created it and it's yours, it's not in a copyrightable way. You have to have something, it has to be fixated in an expression of originality that somebody can reproduce it. So if I record myself singing this original place and somebody could copy it, that's when the copyright is created. If I write a novel and I put it in paper, right? Even if I don't publish it, I still have a copyright protection on it.
Okay.
So the issue is, and I think people a lot of the time say, well, what does copyright protect? Copyright protects the way you put the expression together, right? And I think one thing, we are specifically talking about books, but for example, cover art also could be copyright protected. A picture can be copyright protected. A song, a play, a way that you make a poem. So the misconception is, oh, I need to put the C and that gives me an automatic protection. So whenever I just put C, copyright 2020, and that means I'm all good. The other one is I mail myself a copy of the manuscript and that creates a copyright. And remember, just having this fixated expression and originality, you have a copyright. What you don't have is a registered copyright under the U.S. Copyright Act. The only way to have a registered copyright under U.S. copyright law is to actually go to the copyright.gov website, create an account, and either mail in a physical copy of your book or load it up. And once you go through that process, pay the $65, you get back a certificate of registration. That means you have a registered copyright. I was talking to a client, and I think this confuses people, Joe. I was talking to a client and I asked her, do you have a registered copyright? And she said, well, I have the C, or they told me I didn't need to. So I said, no, you have a copyright, but you don't have a registered copyright. And what's important about having a registered copyright is that the U.S. Supreme Court in the past couple of years actually said that for you to bring a lawsuit for copyright infringement, you need to have a registered copyright. Now, the advantage of having a registered copyright is that if you have somebody who's infringing on your work, you can get attorney's fees, you can get statutory damages, you can get all sorts of extra whistles that you can't if you don't have a registered copyright. Now, the other thing to remember is that by having a registered copyright, you also have a way to protect, if it's happened to a couple of my clients, they're Amazon exclusive and somebody takes their book and puts it on, iTunes or puts in, so to be able to send a takedown notice, right? You actually have a official government piece of paper that says, I produced this is mine, please take it down. So the process, and I think, Joe, maybe for a lot of my clients, and I think a lot of what you do, Dry, it's trying to get them to organize as a business and think as a business, saying, okay, what do I need to do? I write my books, I have the cover artist, I have all this stuff. How do I protect my work? Well, it's kind of easy. You create you or have somebody else create a account at the Copyright Office, and a week after publication or 10 days after publication, you go ahead and file for registration. To get the most benefit out of the statute, you have to register 90 days from publication.
Okay.
That's it's 90 days from publication. Now, that doesn't mean if you haven't registered that you don't do it anymore, because if you register within 5 years, you have other advantages, like it's the assumption of creation, and it's all sorts of other things. But so for any of our clients or people who are listening, right, if you look back and say, oh, well, I have nothing registered, I'm not going to do it. One, yes, you should do it because it will help. Two, it's a business expense. And three, also, if this is part of your estate, right, this is your means of business, having something that you can either have in a trust or have a literary trustee or something that you are leaving to somebody, having it registered will make it a lot easier to handle.
Yeah, and I think we'll probably talk a little bit in a second about the whole copyright infringement and plagiarism. But, my thing always when I'm talking to clients is about the intellectual property value. If you don't have that fixed in the legal system, how do you expect anybody that you're going to have as a counterparty to transact with you? If they can't, if I'm Disney and I want to buy your intellectual property, my checkbook is big, but if you can't show me that this stuff is, clearly yours, and there's a nice clean documentation all the way back to, the Copyright Office, why am I going to bother? Right? I mean, it's not going to get through due diligence.
Yeah, and and I think what's important is what you're saying a little bit of, if the biggest issue is if you're in the business of publishing books, right, and you're in the business of producing this, you have to treat it as, okay, it's not just the words in the page. It can be so much more. It could be the audiobooks. It can be the translations. It can also be adaptations. It could be movies. It could be all of these things. But maybe the step to start is maybe kind of understanding what exactly is the copyright law protecting me from, right? So
sure.
So copyright law doesn't protect titles, doesn't protect series name, doesn't protect characters per se. The copyright law is meant to protect, again, the artistic fixation of expression and originality. And what we're talking about in kind of unlegal language would be, it protects the way you put your words together. Mm-hmm. That's kind of what it protects. It's protecting how you're telling a story and the process of telling a story. But it's not protecting the ideas behind the story. And I had a list that I think it's always really important to look at, of what does the copyright protect? Well, it protects the way you string your language together. And this is from a case. The Copyright Act protects expression, but it does not protect ideas, procedures, processes, systems, methods of operation, concepts, principles, or discoveries, right? So when you are registering your book, you're registering the way you put the words together. You're not registering that you wrote about a May, December fireman, librarian book. Mm. It's the way that your words express exactly that story. But everybody else can write a story, because if you think about it, and I think you probably, last time we spoke a little bit about, there's like 36 different stories. I think that there's only 36 different stories.
Yeah, it's not. And guess what? Readers don't want new stories.
No, well, and even if you tried, and then somebody said there's like 7, really, it's the monster overcoming adversity, enemies to lovers. So what copyright law, or what intellectual property in a way, copyright protects the way you put your expression of your ideas, the expression of the ideas, not the ideas, right? So you're not protecting, and let's think about it. So young, really handsome billionaire that never works gives a shy girl who seems to be always like 19 or 20 a contract so they can be in a BDSM relationship, and he has commitment issues. There's hundreds of books out there like that. But what each author has is, how did they put their words together for their story? And every story is different, right? Even if the premise is the same. This billionaire who's into BDSM who gives her a contract. You can go to the same thing. If you're writing about Alien, you're really probably going to have somebody from outer space that is going to, and I don't know why in all of these books, the woman always died. The alien women are always dead. So they have to come to Earth and get these. Well, copyright doesn't protect the fact that there's a story about an alien that comes to Earth and we're compatible, even though they're 7 feet tall. That how kind of makes it. But each story, which in some of them are fabulous, and just that what these authors have is how did they put their expression of the idea, not the idea of that story. So when you file, and it's really easy to file, it takes about 20-25 minutes. It's $65, and I think that the more used to doing it you get, the easier. You should really do it within a month of publication. And one of the things is the Copyright Office is really good about working with people, answering questions. If you have a personal assistant, maybe the personal assistant gets to do it. But all of that is you only register from the title page to the back without any back matter. Because again, what are you registering? The way you put your words together.
And that's a really good point, because I've learned the hard way that if you include the stuff a typical author wants to include, like back matter and stuff about their Facebook group, the Copyright Office sees, and the worst thing is if you include a chapter from the next book, it'll just blow up the whole thing. And it's not even just restarting. They're like, that doesn't qualify.
Yeah, it doesn't. Well, because you have to, and there's a way to put exemptions. And as you get more educated, you exempt certain texts, right? And for example, a lot of my clients who have translations, we register their translations too. And you basically say, this is a translation. It was a work for hire. It was a whatever it was. But the original work is in English. This is the second work. Now, some of my clients also, because audios, right? Abridge, unabridged. If you have an unabridged, probably protected by the original copyright. What if it's an abridged version and they took down words and they did another writing? So I think it's important to work. But the one thing to remember is that the Copyright Office will email you. They will ask for questions. Now, I think we need to clarify a little bit, like, the reason a copyright registry exists is to get notice to other people that who the owner of the copyright is. So it's not a secret society, right? The U.S. Copyright Office open to the public. You can go and search and look at who owns the copyright of certain books. Now, one of the things to remember is copyright is, depending on whether you're writing on your own name or on a pen name, it's author life plus 75 if you're writing your real name. Pen name, it might be 90 to 95 years. But the important part of it about this is that why this is there is to provide notice of who is the owner of the artistic material, right? So it's kind of, and think about this. So Beauty and the Beast, which I think is one of the tropes, right? That a lot of authors that I represent write on romance. Well, this is a modern tale of Beauty and the Beast. Well, the Beauty and the Beast copyright ran out long time ago, but you can write your own interpretation and your own views, and then you register that, and that is protected the way you did it. There has been a lot of discussion about, a lot of different things. I think the important part is, for purposes of running a good, tight business in publishing, is make sure you register your copyrights. You might have a lot of fans. They come and say, you've been copied, you've been plagiarized. I think it's important at that point to kind of just assess and talk to the right professionals as to, if it's a word by word copying, that's kind of easy because you look at the word by word and the words are yours. The way you put the words together are yours.
Mhm.
Other areas, I think it's really important to consult with a professional, whoever the professional is, and can give you the right advice. If somebody, like I said, takes your book, I had a client who they basically took the book with the same cover and just put the other name. And it's like, no, this is not even funny, right? You just,
Yeah, you didn't try hard.
you didn't even try. Anything else, I think it's really important to understand also that it's a complex area, that there is a lot of litigation regarding music. For example, rap music. Did you copy me? Did you not copy me? Screenplays, and a lot of other areas where does copyright protect the other artistic form of expression? And, especially in very niche areas, the similarities you might be seeing might have nothing to do with copyright infringement, but with the fact that they're writing the same scenes affair, which is every book that has a May-December romance, you're going to have somebody that's older December than the May. And that's just something that because of the definition. And just even think about, in any of the PNR, when you have a PNR romance, you're going to have an extra, it's going to be vampire, it's going to be a wolf,
werewolf, demon, angel, yeah.
Yeah, and all of those are going to be in situations. Ultimately, I think the use of some terms, and I suppose I should say, a lot of people talk about, Mosaic plagiarism and this type of plagiarism. I think we need to be careful when we use those words, because Mosaic plagiarism has been used in academic papers, right? When you don't give appropriate credit. There's no case law in the US that says that Mosaic plagiarism has ever been a basis for a copyright infringement. And again, what our purpose in this one was to kind of make sure people knew, to protect your rights, you need to register it. But the biggest thing about registration is not only to protect against copyright infringement, but also to create a good estate planning, to also have your best value, and to have these organized in a way that you actually can do something with them. Because, for example, I have clients right now that they might have offers from, a movie making company or a streaming company. And it's great that the copyrights are registered because we have that protection, right? We protected exactly their words. And as they go through the development process, there's not going to be a question of who owns the copyright of that material.
For sure. So you talked a little bit about plagiarism, but what about, with the way things are now with authors, there's kind of these things that become almost gray areas. And I'll give you a couple of, so when they start to do things like shared worlds and common co-writing of things where like maybe it's multiple authors writing in a shared group, and how that can be managed, as well as another one that I think is interesting is the whole idea of fan fiction and how that can play into things, because I know some authors are very adamant about how their work gets interpreted, and others see that as a way for their fans to demonstrate their commitment to the community.
That's a really interesting question, because think about, so Archive of Our Own, which is the largest fan fiction, website internet created. All of those are fan fiction based, where people are writing in universes that don't belong to them, right?
Mhm.
So the question would be, so you have supernatural, you have Sherlock Holmes, you have Harry Potter, you have Twilight,
Twilight.
you have, I mean, and you go down the list, Games of Thrones. And the question is, well, why can people write in these universes that they don't belong to themselves? Well, when you talk about fan fiction, nobody's trying to sell it. So so you have copyright protection protects you from somebody trying to get monetary advantage of selling their work as your own, right?
Mm.
But if this work is given away for free and it's not for profit, then you start getting into First Amendment rights. Can I go ahead and, express my ideas any way I want? And I think as long as, and this has been a fight that has been fought by a lot of the fan fiction sites, especially at the very beginning, where some of the big authors, like you were saying, might say, I don't want people writing in my universe because they're making my characters do weird things, and then you start looking at all this terminology like shipping, and, you have the dark Harry Potter, or you have the Puff Girls, I think it is. Where
So to give you an example, I was on Clubhouse the other day and I went into a room. It was a fan fiction room for, I think they were Twilight mainly writing, and their language, like I've never even read fan fiction, let alone, but I was just like interested to learn about it. And there's a whole syntax that they use in shorthand of how they talk about things, which they were happy to share with me what it meant. But it was like, it's deeper than just writing and finding somebody that wants to read it. There's like a community around how you do it, and sub communities in those. Like, is it really spicy, or is it, like they have terms for all that. Tagging.
I think, yes, you're talking about tagging, which is, I think, AO3, and we've been, it's a fabulous site to go to because you can get from the explicit to the PG. Yeah. And, there's a lot of sources of reading material, but tagging is a big deal for them because that is the way they communicate. Because it's like, if I don't want to read about major character death, there's a tag to it. And it basically says, okay, this person, or, Hannibal Lecter and Will is another one. The agent Hannibal is another fandom, and you have the dark Hannibal Lecter, and I'm like, Hannibal Lecter was a murderer. He
never.
But it has a great fandom, and people write in it and enjoy it. So I think that when you talk about fan fiction in those spaces, why are those not taken down? I think that the issue there is, and this is a fabulous case, which I love. So Mattel has a copyright and a trademark on Barbie. And there was this great photographer that decided to, and there's been a couple of them, that he really had it with Barbie and was going to create, was doing these photographs. And you had Barbie wrapped in bacon, put in an oven, or putting in the blender. And Barbie Mattel didn't kind of like that. These are wholesome, dolls that should not be wrapped in bacon or should not be melted. And the court said, well, that's an artistic form of expression, right? The fact that you have a trademark and that you have some copyrights on the, Barbie pink and things like that doesn't mean that somebody else can't take a picture and they have a copyright that they are protecting. You can use a form of expression. It was fixated in a picture. It was an expression of how awful things you could do to Barbie, and it was original. And the court agreed with the photographer, which is you can take as many pictures of you want of these Barbies, because nobody is going to look at these pictures thinking that you're trying to sell a doll.
Right.
Or that Barbie, somehow it has something to do with Barbie. So I think that in the fan fiction arena, or now in, for example, there's a lot of copyright issues with podcasting and with YouTubing, right? What is exactly that you're protecting with a copyright? And I have a couple of clients that have these great universes where they play things together, right? So they play in the Star Wars universe. Well, those are not copyright protected, but they create their own universe and their own art. That has a copyright protection, and that way they're doing. So I think, to a little bit like you were saying, the how does copyright interact? I think we're in a time and place where the law is trying to catch up to what is.
Yeah.
And, not everything you write is copyright protected, but you do have a lot of things. And again, copyright doesn't just protect words in a page. It protects a lot of plays, dances, music expression. All of that is protected. And as we go forth, then the question is, how much does copyright protect? And you probably have heard about this case where this mom recorded her daughter, or I can't remember, dancing to this song, and she put it on YouTube, and it became a big hit. Well, the producers of the music, or the owners of the music, ended up sending a takedown notice, and she's like, it was just a video of my kid dancing to this, and it just becomes where I think we're learning how to interact with each other.
Yeah. I think that's one of those things where pretty quickly that gets figured out, especially when, like you've said a few times when we've talked, when there's big money on the table. Yeah. So when somebody can go after a YouTube or a Facebook, then YouTube and Facebook figures out how they're going to enforce copyright or license things, right?
Well, and the reality is, at the end of the day, you have the right to protect your works. Now, going to your question that I wrote, which was, what happens when all of these authors write in shared universe, right? Originally, and I don't know if you remember, years ago, there was something called the Kindle Worlds.
Yeah, I remember that. The 5 minutes it was around.
Yeah, the authors... there was an author universe, and I'm just going to use Star Wars, but it's not that. So Star Wars. So let's imagine that Star Wars let other people write in their universe and sell it for profit. But the original copyright of the characters in the story of Star Wars continued to belong to the creators of the Star Wars series. Now, the stories of other characters, even if it wasn't that universe, belong to the creator. However, the use of everything else had to be licensed. And I think a lot of those worlds, there were some people that took them down and never to be sent again. And then there were a lot of authors that decided to continue to do it, and they created their own universes.
Yeah.
And some of them very, very successfully, right? So I created it's like saying, if the creators of Dallas let other people write in the Dallas universe, the Dallas universe still belonged to the Dallas creators, but the stories of other parties were theirs. So, and I think a lot of questions that people say, so if I say that my character is drinking a Coke, will Coca-Cola come after me? Probably not, right? I think when you're looking at copyright or trademark protection, which I know you want to talk a little bit about trademark.
Yeah, when you're ready.
I think a lot of the issue is, how are you using those concepts? Music tends to be the one, and that will be a separate podcast if you ever want to do about how to use music, and because they're much more aggressive about the protection of their lyrics and what they do. But I mean, my character can be carrying a Chanel bag, and nobody's going to think that my book is selling Chanel bags. The fact of my character. So we write about areas and places we know of, and there's not really anything to worry about. I think the problem becomes when if you're writing something that could be considered defamatory or derogatory, right? That's when you start worrying about.
Yeah.
And
so why don't you talk a little bit about trademark? And that's a whole nother, I mean, it's completely separate, but sometimes gets confused and certainly gets applied incorrectly.
So when you look at intellectual property, which is the protection of concepts, right? The protection of processes. Intellectual property law is divided in three. You have copyright, which is it protects the fixation of expression or originality of ideas. You have trademarks, and you have patents. Patents really, it doesn't apply. Patent is the way you make something, the process. A trademark, and when you think about trademark, the biggest trademark you can think of, Nike, Barbie, which is a trademark, then you look at Adidas, Nike, Apple, right? All of those are copyright protects the creator by saying this was created by me in whatever form of expression that I originally did it. I took a photograph of the Grand Canyon. What is copyright protecting? The way I took that picture in that format and how I expressed it. Now, trademark is meant to protect the consumer. So I don't know if you go to a restaurant and when you say, can I have a Diet Coke? And they'll say, is Pepsi okay?
Mm-hmm.
And the idea here was, and there was, that was a settlement many, many years ago, is that when people said, can I have a Diet Coke? I really wasn't asking for a Diet Cola. I was asking for a particular brand, which was Coke.
Mm.
And so trademark is to protect the consumer. So if I am going to buy a 50 Shades of Grey book or a Twilight book or a book that has a certain series name, the Harry Potter series, that is protected by trademark because it's supposed to protect the consumer because they say, I want a Harry Potter book or I want to the whole, it's protected by what it's supposed to be telling me. So series names, not title names, series names are supposed to protect the consumer. Now, one thing to remember is that trademark, it's divided and it's a lot more complex because you divide by classes. So for example, ebooks and paperbacks might be in a different class, blogs. So what do you want to protect? As an author, you would be looking at your pen name or your author name, right?
Okay,
your
that makes
company
sense.
name if you are publishing under a company name. You would also be looking at, is there any sort of logo or merchandise that I'm using that people expect to see and it's identifiable. So you're looking for marks of authenticity for something that distinguishes you from something else. So for example, if I say I want a J.K. Rowling's book, it means to me I want somebody that was written by J.K. Rowling's, or that when I see by J.K. Rowling's, it means something. So a lot of authors do protect their pen name or their real name just to make sure that there is nobody else that can write in their genre, right? In what they're doing, saying, okay, this is a X such book. Well, X such book has a meaning. And it acts like a trademark. And so that analysis is now the one of the things that you and I talked about, Joe, and I think is copyright is cheap. $65, you get a copyright, and you get a copyright for, depending on whether you're writing your pen name or your real name, for life plus 75 or for 95 years. Trademark is every 7 years. The trademark office is going to ask, are you still using it? Because think about all of the sorts of trademarks that were being used, products that were being sold 40 years ago that are not sold now, right?
Right, right.
So you have Volkswagen, you had like Saturn, think about it. Saturn is gone. Nobody is selling the Saturn car anymore. So that trademark goes away. You don't use it, you lose it.
Okay.
Copyright, you publish the book, you get it a registered copyright, and then you take it down from sale, you still have the copyright of your book. It doesn't go away just because it's not for sale.
Well, now, and correct me if I'm wrong or misinterpreting this, but with trademark, don't you, before you can actually trademark something, doesn't it already have to demonstrate what you're saying it demonstrates in the marketplace?
Well, it's a very different process to get it, because a copyright, you just send them a copy of what you publish or how you expressed it. With the trademark office, first of all, that would be something that I don't recommend that anybody does it themselves, right? You're setting yourself for a big, big failure if you do it that way, because you have to submit an application. Now, remember, those applications are submitted under penalty of perjury that you're saying what is true. And you are going to have to show proof. So if I say I'm writing under Emma Slate and my name, Emma Slate, acts like a trademark, I'm going to have to provide a series of things to the trademark office, including proof that it does act that way. Or, for example, in the infamous case of the Cockygate, right, where she was trying to register a word where words are not registered. But if she had, let's suppose, the Cocky series, she would have had to prove that the Cocky series in romance books was being used consistently and identifiable. And that when people who were searching for romance books, when they put the Cocky series, but she had been using the term Cocker series, looked at it, said, this is the series I want. So you are giving it protection. So yes, the trademark office will want proof of usage and that it acts like a mark, not just like an identifier, that it acts like a mark, that it has. So it's a process that does not cost $65. And there are some fees associated with paying the trademark office. You filed your application, examiner gets assigned, then it gets examined, then it gets published for publication. So the whole process takes anything from 9 months to a year. Periods shorten sometimes, periods lengthen sometimes. You have to register them by class, right? Depends on, you don't have a trademark for everything. For example, Apple has a trademark for electronics computers that doesn't have the right.
Yeah, there's other Apple trademarks other than just them, right?
Yeah. Well, and you have, and think about it, there are a lot of things that might have different, there's, I'm just going to make up a name, Samsonite. They have a trademark just for, traveling products. There might be another Samsonite for something else. So that is a more involved process, and the cost, depending on searches, how prepared you want to be, can be anywhere between $1,600 to $2,000 to $4,000. And once you get, now this is something I think you and I talked about. I think one needs to be careful, because here, putting the R next to something can only be done when your trademark was granted by the trademark office. You can put TM, which is trademark, because again, just like copyright, there is common law trademark, but you cannot say that you have a registered trademark if you don't. There are penalties to do, and you need to be careful, especially, for example, if you have a company and you were wanting to make sure that nobody else use your name as a company, and you say, well, I'm just going to put the R. Don't put the R, put a TM if that's appropriate, but you cannot put an R unless the government has given you a certificate of trademark. So,
makes sense.
And then you will get, after you get granted, 5 or 6 years later, the trademark office will send you some paperwork that you have to fulfill. It's not going to cost the same amount, but you have to continue to prove that you're using it as a trademark and not that you stop using it. And because one of the things you'll look at if you go, again, The trademark office is public. All information that is there is for the benefit of the public. It will tell you if the trademark is dead. And
Okay.
if something, so, if you wanted to figure out whether somebody else is using the trademark, you can just go to the trademark office and run a search. And those are all free. So
Awesome. That's been super helpful, Margarita. I
well,
really appreciate that.
No, I really thank for the opportunity. And there's a lot, of course, we could talk about, but I think
For sure.
Yeah, I think that the biggest issue is if you're an author and are in the business of, looking at this as a long-term career, one of the things that you really think about once, you write a great book, you have a great cover, make sure that you are protecting your copyrights by registering them. And then is there something that you would want to protect with a trademark? And have an analysis. There are plenty of good intellectual property lawyers that can help you. But at a minimum, I think all of our clients should be registering their copyrights, not just for the protection. And, remember that the law is this material copyright protectable? What is protected is the way you put your ideas together, not the ideas themselves. And that is what the copyright gives you, the protection of that. And it protects you against, I have clients who've had their books stolen and translated into other languages. And with our copyright from the US, we can go ahead and take those down, saying those words belong to you.
Well, the latest one I heard was folks going on ACX and claiming other people's ebooks and then trying to get audiobooks made from them.
I know, I heard the same thing. The one was that they were translated into other languages. I'm like, wow, that's really...
This is right here in the US. This isn't even so in fact, I was talking with Dan Wood from Draft to Digital, and he was saying, once you put your ebook up, even if you're not planning on getting that audiobook done right away, to go onto ACX and claim it as your own, because people are going there and it's like a never-ending battle with these pirates.
I know. And one thing to think is, so if you believe your books have been pirated or are being on those companies, we do a lot of takedown notices with those fly-by-night places. Sometimes it's really hard because you end up having to go ahead and report the actual company, the website and and we've been pretty successful in trying to get some of those down by reporting to the host that they don't want to host that. Because even though these companies have these, and one thing I say, but maybe a lot of these places where you can get the books for free have a lot of viruses. So whoever downloads the book for free is going to get a virus. And a lot of these are fly-by-night operations. And I know it's like playing whack-a-mole. We have a lot of issues with YouTube by having a lot of our audiobooks go on there. However, they're pretty responsive. And once you show them what their original work is, they immediately take it down. It's just very time consuming to do.
Yeah. And on that, I know that there's more creative ways too. Like I was watching a thing, Lindsay Baroker. She's got a lot of audiobooks in her series. So what she did is she's gone and put the first audiobook on YouTube.
Okay.
And she's seen that come through as additional sales in her other audiobooks, as well as she makes money on the ads during the book being played. So, and then it becomes really easy for her when other people pop up with her works. She's got real clear indication to YouTube, like, why it can't be that, because the legitimate one's over here.
Yeah. Well, and that's I mean, protecting your property is important. And I think with the right copyright registration with kind of the right documentation, it makes it so much easier to deal with, the theft of your copyrighted material. And one of the things, and this probably for another day on the process of what happens if you find something, but a takedown notice is a process that most legitimate places have, where you have to fill out the paperwork, but you have to remember that whenever you submit something, you are swearing under penalty of perjury that what you're saying is true. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that is important to remember, in that one of the instances is you can't say you have a registered copyright when you don't have one. You can say you can have a copyright, and you don't need a registered copyright to take down something, but it's just one of those things. And we have stories on. My favorite one was I had a client whose book was taken down because it had a similar title than somebody else, and they were in such different areas that it just, to get them to say, okay, these cannot be the same books, even though they have the same name. One is in super sci-fi where she has 7 husbands, and the other one is a Christian one. They're not anywhere together, but they had a similar name, so they did.
Yeah, with 8 million ebook titles out there, it's going to be harder and harder to have an original title.
Well, and titles, that's the reason why titles are not either copyright or trademark protected. I mean, there's only so many words in the English language, right? And 36 plots, that is going to be kind of hard to. But again, copyright is meant to protect, not titles, just the way you put your words together or your original form of expression that's fixated in some form. And fixated could be song, could be audio, could be writing, could be a picture, all of those Picassos that are originals, those are all protected by copyright.
All right.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
And we'll have you back on. I'm certain that there's more stuff you can cover and talk about, whether it's NDAs or contracts, but you've given us a lot to think about in this show. If anybody's looking for you, how can they get in contact with you?
I have a website, Margarita Coale, and it's Coale Derecho, Spanish. So www.coalderecho.com would be, and you can search me on the web, but it's coal, like lump of coal with an E.
All right.
I would welcome any comments or thoughts. And, if some of your listeners have any specific topic they would like to talk about, because I mean, there's a lot of, agents, selling of foreign rights, audio rights. How do you sell original series? There's a lot of stuff we do that I can help with. And there's a lot of author stuff, NDAs, like you were saying, the protection of screenplays, just a lot of different things.
All right.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.
We'll be seeing you.
Bye.
Bye.